Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Shrinkschats. I'm Monica Burton.
And I'm Annette Reiter. And today we wanted to discuss with you pandemic burnout. And truly, the reason is because we're burnout.
Yes, we are. We are recognizing the signs of burnout, so we thought it would be important for you guys to know what are the warning signs and most importantly, what to do when experiencing this kind of burnout because it is different. It's a different kind.
Mhm. Right. And really, our whole, kind of autonomic system is designed to experience stress in kind of short bursts of time. And what's happening is kind of similar to what happens like in wartime when things drag on and changes and ambiguity becomes the way things normally are going to be now. It's ambiguous. We don't really know how it's going to be. We don't know how it's going to be next month. We're 6 months into this here if you're in the United States and Florida. And it's just, not, we're getting little bits of life back, but life is feeling very different. And so our system is getting a little stressed out. And I think in these last few weeks, I'm noticing a lot of my friends, family, and clients and myself are hitting walls, just don't have the energy for the coping skills, Maybe I was really into working out in my backyard, don't have it anymore. So I was managing, I'm fine, I'm going to do this. Those coping skills were working, but now they're not.
Right. And that creates concern too, because it's like, oh my gosh, what I was doing before, I'm not doing now, or I'm totally not motivated to do that. Is there something wrong with me? That's what I keep hearing. What is wrong with me? And, at this point, I thought we'd be back and doing quote unquote normal life, and we're not. And so there's feelings of discouragement as well.
Mm-hmm.
And so, we want to let's go over the warning signs or just some signs that you are entering into this phase of mental exhaustion and burnout.
Right. Irritability is number one. Mm-hmm. And it's often even not just easily irritable. You might feel like it's uncontrollably irritable. Like, you'll think about it later and realize that would not have made me mad or pissed me off before. What's going on, right? Mm-hmm. You're feeling a little irrational in your irritability. Mm-hmm. And you may be asking for more therapeutic sessions or yelling more at your kids, or your partner feels like they're yelling more at you.
Yes, more irritability is another sign. And you also feel like maybe you're trying to learn how to manage that irritability, but you can't shake it. It's just there.
Right. It feels a little bit like the irritability is controlling you rather than you controlling the irritability. Like mm-hmm. It's kind of moving up. I always say in the bus of life, I want my prefrontal cortex to be in the driver's seat, and then I want all my other feelings to be back there. And I'm only going to allow certain feelings to decide my behavior. But in this type of kind of pandemic burnout that we're experiencing, some of those characters of ourselves in the seats that are behind us that we've been able to keep back there, they're like breaking through, and irritability is one of them. And they're taking over the bus driver, which is like, the road is getting crazy.
Right. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Right.
And it's harder the things you might have tried before, you may have been in the last month really attempting to follow your therapist's instructions, whatever, go walk, go breathe, get outside, and it's not working.
Mm-hmm. Right. Right. Which leads to our second one, which is feeling unmotivated, even with the things that you enjoy. It feels like you don't have that extra like oomph to get there, to want to do it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you may be finding yourself stuck in bed and not knowing, why can't I get myself out of bed? This is not what I usually do. I can't stand that I'm doing this. How, what's going on? Or, so you're getting more into those hypo reactions of feelings. So your feelings are a little bit more depressed. It's very difficult to motivate and get yourself going. Maybe all you can do is go to work. You might be having Zoom burnout, and maybe you thought fall was coming, the kids were going back to school, this was going to be better. And it's turned out that it doesn't feel better at all, because even though there is some sense that it's returning to some bits and pieces of normal, it's a new normal. It's not the same normal.
Right. Mm-hmm. I think we're still grieving the loss of our lives that we had.
Mm-hmm.
And that's that ambiguity you were talking about earlier.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's kind of a crash.
Mm-hmm.
That, we were kind of tolerating, making it, doing it, and then it feels like it's all just kind of fell to pieces.
Mm-hmm.
And
right.
we can't really keep the toleration going anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And, we were talking about this earlier, that this is a kind of a pandemic. Burnout is more of an experience of a long time crisis, like war,
Mm-hmm.
and warfare. And I mean, I'm talking about bigger wars than, where it really affected, like World War II folks might have had coping mechanisms for this or developed that, because, most crises that we experience, although they go on and on, we start to solve them, or there's some place to go where it doesn't exist, right?
Right. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So there's a hurricane in Florida, but we can drive to Georgia and be fine.
Right.
And there's not a hurricane in Georgia. So I can go to restaurants, and I can go live my normal life in Georgia. Yes, it's not Florida, but I could go still somewhere and get away from this and like kind of have a nice little getaway. But the pandemic's in Georgia too.
Right. It's everywhere. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I can't get on a plane and go anywhere because they won't accept me.
Right.
Unwanted.
I remember in one of our first podcasts about the pandemic, I don't remember which one it was, but we talked about Viktor Frankl.
Mm-hmm.
And so as we were kind of planning for this article, I couldn't help but think about him again, and just, the one quote about when everything is taken from a man, like the one thing that's left is our choices.
Right.
And so to really get to understand when you're feeling unmotivated or you're feeling exhausted, or, it's remember that, like, what are our choices? We have a lot of uncertainty going around us right now. And we don't know when it's going to end, and we don't have that, like, okay, let me go to Georgia for a little break. So it's just looking at what are our choices instead of feeling that like stuckness or that unmotivated feeling. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but it's also, normal to feel
Yeah.
this, and it's
Mm-hmm.
This is categorically different.
Right.
And nobody's an expert at it because none of us have gone through it. So
Right.
we're all beginners at how to manage a pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
And, it can behoove you to really exercise your patience with yourself and try to think, maybe this is normal. Maybe I'm not crazy,
Mm-hmm.
the
Mm-hmm.
worst mom or dad on the planet, or
Right. And I mean, it kind of points out to one of the other signs that you're in burnout, which is that feeling detached or feeling empty. That to me is, goes along with what we're talking about. It's like sometimes, especially you said, there are going to be times when you just want to stay in bed. You have all these things that you want to do, or maybe you're thinking, oh, look at all these choices I have, but you just feel very detached from it. And I think that's why it's really important to hear what Annette said, is like, this is normal to feel this way. Right now it's like, because everything feels so heavy and there is a lot of that uncertainty, you're going to feel detached at times. So try not to put so much pressure on yourself.
Right. Yeah, we're kind of jumping to some of the solutions in this, but that's good.
Mm-hmm.
I think that even this morning before we were recording, I just gave myself permission to just lay in my bed for an extra 30 minutes and not do anything, not stretch. Sometimes I I'll do some yoga moves in bed before I get out of bed, or I'll stretch, or I'll deep breathe, or I'll, but that felt like healthy Annette, and pandemic Annette just wanted to stay there. So I just allowed myself to have a little pandemic burnout and said, I can sit in bed till 8:30 and lay there and not do something, not distract myself, and have a little bit of my pandemic burnout. And I think it was almost prepping for this that I gave myself more permission to do less. That, you know, maybe for a while the coping skills were, I'm going to do more. I'm going to get out there and do more. I'm going to try to find a creative way, you know, which is not a bad idea, but if it's not working for you anymore, then it may be a sign that it's time to do less, not more. You know, find a creative way to exercise, find a creative way to do my arts and crafts, find a creative way, you know, but you know what I'm really longing for, I can't get. So I'm longing for more of my typical life to come back, and it's not coming back. So it's okay to just grieve and do a little less.
Right.
And not feel like, oh, what a bad person I am.
Right. Right.
It actually felt kind of decadent. By the end of it, I was like, oh, this feels nice. I haven't just laid in bed unpurposefully. I didn't check my phone. I didn't read articles. I didn't do anything. I just laid there. Sometimes I rolled around.
It's like a little treat. You gave yourself a little treat.
It was, yes. It wasn't quite as good as dark chocolate, but it was pretty good.
Yeah, good. So the other thing is when we start to kind of beat ourselves up, it can also create more anxiety or even panic. And that's another warning sign. If you're noticing that you're having more anxiety or that you're having panic attacks, that it's leading to more mental fatigue.
Yeah, if you're feeling like you can't catch your breath, if you're feeling really racy or ruminating, your thoughts keep going round and round about the same thing. I shouldn't have said that. I shouldn't have said that. I shouldn't have done that. That might be like, oh, I'm starting to get into the more anxiety phase and a little out of control. And anxiety breeds anxiety, and our somatic system, our psychological system that helps us with this, our polyvagal system, all of those systems are exhausted from the pandemic of 6 months so far that we've been going through this. So it's going to be easier, even if you've never felt anxiety. I think people are feeling it. You know, another good sign would be if you're having gut distress. If your stomach feels like it's turning upside down, the GI doctors are feeling this. A lot of people are going into doctor's offices with gut problems. My stomach hurt. You know, I'm having problems. So that's the gut is a second brain of, you know, oftentimes called the first brain sometimes of the body. So it's likely that that's a sign of that anxiety and panic might be getting too much.
Right.
Going into that hyper arousal stage. So you're going over normal arousal and going into the hyper and swirling. Oh, I hate that.
When we're in a constant state of stress, constant state of fight or flight, it does start to impact our physical body through our gut, you know, for sure. It weakens our immune system. And, you know, I think it's just what you said, GI doctors are reporting an increase in stomach distress and an increase in their offices, people coming in. So,
yeah. Yeah, I think we talked about headaches. You know, sometimes when people are distressed, they do, you know, when you're anxious, you do a little compensating. Anxiety is designed to serve the purpose of protecting you. Your body thinks that, your mind thinks when your body is experiencing anxiety, that there's some type of stressor in your environment that's coming after you. So there's little compensating behaviors we do. We put our chin forward because we're trying to attend more. And then we start stressing out our neck muscles. And then we put our things up, we breathe more shallowly. And then all this causes another biological form of stress. And you know, I mean, I think at the beginning of the pandemic, we're like, do yoga, breathe, try to relax. You may not even feel like motivated to do any of that right now. And all that, so, you know, so then that's where it starts to swirl. So it's anxiety and panic attacks are definitely a sign that you are mentally and emotionally exhausted.
As well as GI issues and trouble sleeping.
Ugh.
This is another one, you know, when we're burned out, especially, you know, if we're feeling more depressed or if we're feeling more anxious or, you know, irritable, we hit the pillow because we're so exhausted and we want to go to sleep, and then our mind starts racing. Or you can fall asleep, but then you wake up in the middle of the night and you can't go back to sleep.
Yeah, yeah. I tend to do one or the other almost every night. I either can't fall asleep or I wake up 2 or 3 times in the middle of the night. And it is definitely mental and emotional exhaustion kicking in to the point that your body can't rest. It sounds like, oh, well, what I should do is rest. But actually, because you've either gone too hyper or hypo in your emotionality all day long, not by choice, but just because you're over the top,
Right.
then you're just so exhausted at night that your body actually has disruption in sleep. And if you ever had a newborn,
I was just going to say that.
yeah. And, yeah, right. Then you know what I'm talking about. Like, I remember people telling me, oh, just sleep when the baby sleeps. It's like, oh, by the time the baby falls asleep, I'm like, I've got like acid reflux from all the anxiety and adrenaline pumping.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes when you wake up in the middle of the night from that dead sleep and all your adrenaline is pumping, I mean, it could take hours for you to clear that out of your body so that it could fall back asleep just in time for the baby to cry again.
Right.
And
just in time.
perfect timing.
Mm-hmm. Or it's like you've finally fallen back asleep and then your alarm clock goes off.
Yeah, I think so. I think a good thing to just do is, listen to some of our podcasts on sleep and, creating a healthy sleep cycle and also, implementing kind of a system. So you get up if you don't fall back asleep within 30 minutes. Also finding ways to rest throughout your day then, slow down, maybe sit and do nothing for 15 or 30 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
Give yourself permission to rest in other ways so that your body can know that although everything feels different, it can relax.
Right. And if you are motivated to do meditation, there's actually a lot of research that meditation is better than a deep sleep. So if you can't, if you find that you're not sleeping in the night, you might want to look into a meditation practice that is good for you. As I've said in other ones, I'm just full disclosure, my favorite one is Ziva Technique by Emily Fletcher. But, I think any meditation right now actually will help help your mind, help you feel better, get that restfulness you need, even if you're not sleeping necessarily.
Yeah, Tamara Fontenot was on our show. I want to say it was podcast 13. And she did a nice kind of breathing guided imagery exercise. And that's very helpful for people who, meditation like is too difficult or there's lots of apps out there. We won't point you to anyone and, to listen to, but that can help you. But I find sometimes if you're so anxious, I almost need like a guided imagery. I need someone to talk me through a way to, and that's a form of meditation. And people use religious practices, repeating prayers. There's in Catholicism, people do the rosary, and that's kind of a form of meditation. I think Buddhism, there's something with the beads on their wrists that they follow through, and that's a form of meditation. So there's various different ways to do that. And I'm doing more and more of that right now because, man, am I mentally, emotionally exhausted.
Me too. Me too.
Yeah. Is this a good time for a break?
Yep. Yes. So let's take a quick break, and please don't forget to go to our Facebook page, our Instagram, and now even our YouTube channel. Subscribe and like us and check us out. And we'll take a quick break, and then we'll come back and we'll talk more about what to do when you are feeling burnt out.
More on pandemic burnout. Thank you.
Shrinkschat is proudly sponsored by St. Petersburg Therapy, providing counseling for individuals, couples, and groups for over 20 years. Now offering the convenience of telemed, online meeting for your health and safety. For more information, visit online at stpetersburgtherapy.com.
Monica Burton is a licensed marriage and family therapist based in St. Petersburg, Florida, with over 17 years of experience. Monica offers individual, family, and couples therapy, and during this time of COVID-19 is offering teletherapy. Monica invites you to check out her YouTube channel, where she offers great tips and advice on relationships, parenting, family health, resolving conflict, and coping with stress. Go to YouTube to find Monica Burton, LMFT. There are new segments every Thursday. Or check out Monica's website at monicaburtonlmft.com.
What if you could train your brain to think healthier thoughts? Cope Notes uses daily text messages to help you do exactly that. All you need is a cell phone and a brain. To learn more and try it for yourself, visit www.copenotes.com.
Welcome back to Pandemic Burnout. I'm Annette Reiter.
And I'm Monica Burton. Thanks for coming back to us. So we've kind of gone over some different steps, about 8 steps or warning signs of when you are exhausted mentally, and most importantly of what a pandemic burnout really looks like. And now we'll kind of talk about a few things. We've already given some hints of what to do when you're feeling these things, but let's talk a little bit more about what to do when you are feeling burned out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I the one we maybe didn't cover as much before we go right into that was that, you could have like emotions that take over you and you don't understand it. You could be crying, or even like odd, uncontrollable laughing.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes if you've ever found yourself in a very stressful situation that is maybe a sad situation, like if you've been at a funeral and all of a sudden you start giggling and you can't stop, that's a sign that you're kind of probably in an emotional kind of crisis, that you're having too much emotion. So when you're having kind of an inappropriate reaction, but a lot of people are experiencing a lot of crying. I know everyone. I have individually wrapped Kleenexes now in my office, these little guys. And I'm going through a lot of these little packets because, of course, with the pandemic, it's like you use it, you take it.
Yes.
And more than I have in the beginning. And I think that's a sign that our body wants to cry. And crying releases oxytocin. So it's which is a chemical that relaxes our central nervous system. So it's a natural reaction to too much stress. So, but I would just also be on the lookout for like feelings that wouldn't be typical for you in a situation.
Right. It's okay to cry. It's good. It's good to cry. It doesn't mean you're weak. It means you're releasing.
Right. Yeah. And if it's uncontrollable, it means your body knows that this would be the best thing for it. So feel free to kind of settle into it. Again, it might be a sign that you want to slow down. Before we go into, I was thinking about this, like accepting that life is different right now kind of is a good way to think of this. And I was thinking of the Road Less Traveled. In the beginning of the Road Less Traveled book, if anyone ever read that, it's all about, accepting that you're going to go down a different way and accepting that life is hard. And the more you accept that life is hard, the less hard it becomes, because it's just like part of the conditions. And so I was thinking about how some of the people we're talking about talk about like just accepting this is a shitty time.
Right.
It just is.
Well, and that's one way to cope with this burnout is accepting the difference. And, I think even for me, I kept holding out that something was going to change until even just the other day, I said to you, like, we're not ever going to go back, and so it's just, we can only go forward. And so now it's just, okay, even in 2021, because I know a lot of us are holding on to, yay, 2021. It doesn't mean it's going to erase the pandemic, and so accepting the difference is really like, okay, things are changing. And while we can't go back, we can look at what's different now and how to embrace now in order to help us continue to move forward and learning to cope with what we do have that's right in front of us.
Yeah, and we're living through an unprecedented time. I mean, we have not had a global pandemic in 100 years. So, and things are different. And some of those things are good, right? Technology is helping, but it's also, we're getting burnt out on Zoom meetings and, You know, I think I was meeting with a bunch of old college friends for the first time in years via Zoom meetings once a month. And then we all kind of took a few months off. We like reached capacity. Like that wasn't even helping us. It was making me feel worse. So,
Right. Mm-hmm.
right. So accepting that it's different. And I know, you know, sometimes we always talk about the power of positive thinking, but I also think it can be positive to be realistic and be okay with accepting that it's different and even that it's kind of bad. You know, because
Right.
sometimes it feels like we're kind of doing happy talk over what feels terrible. When it feels terrible, it feels terrible. So if this is feeling crappy for you right now, okay.
Well, I think we have to acknowledge the crappy parts first. You know, if we just try to put a Band-Aid on it, it makes the crappy parts even worse, you know? And so it's acknowledging that some of this really is pretty horrible,
Mm-hmm.
you know?
Yeah.
And to me, when we are able to accept or acknowledge and recognize our grief, our loss, our, you know, hey, this kind of sucks right now, it does help pivot us into a different place. If I just try to run from the uncomfortable, I keep coming back to it and it grows.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's, I think part of that kind of accepting this very different life makes me not feel so bad that I wanted to lay in bed for an extra half hour this morning.
Right.
I know like, oh, okay, that's okay. Cause doesn't feel as good as it used to.
Right. Mm-hmm. And, you know, it kind of goes with what we were talking about earlier is expecting less of yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And even like those of us that are high achievers, that's a hard thing to do,
Right.
you know. But even our kids going back to school, a lot of schools are saying like academics are not the priority right now.
Right. We're trying to help your kids socialize in this new way, help them get through this year and this way of being, and, you know, help them stay healthy and give them purpose and meaning in life. And I think but yeah, if you've been a high achiever, you're, you know, you like the feeling of competence and then, so, and it makes, you know, the one of the downsides for higher achievers is they're sometimes hesitant to try new things because they don't want to go through the experience of incompetence to get competent at it.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, they may not want to try new things on. So this is feeling very difficult because you have to, you have no choice but to try this dress on.
Right.
Because
Mm-hmm.
the pandemic is all encompassing and it's sucking you up.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to wear this somehow.
Right.
And, you know, it's okay to be resentful and upset and a little pissed off about it. Maybe not okay to take that out on your loved ones.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So then it's also an important thing to recognize the stages of grief you might be going through from this loss. So it's all encompassing of loss, like, and how are you going through that? Because when I think you notice, like we're talking about, that you're going through stages of grief, then you can recognize them for what they are rather than letting them own you. You can own them.
Mm-hmm. Right. Mm-hmm.
So you might be like in denial. When my kids go back to school, it's all going to be great. Yeah. Could be, right?
It's funny. I was talking to my sister, and when her kids went back to school, and she was like, "Why am I crying?" She was like, "We've been wanting to go back to school forever since March, and now they're gone, and I'm crying."
Right.
And you know, I said, "Well, one, it's a change, you know, and we've formed these." You know, we've formed ways to cope even within our families, and there are some good things that have come out of the pandemic. It's like there's some good things and not so good things, both and, you know, but we've got to recognize that this is another change, and we're not going back to the same school year. And so there's some sadness in there too. So it's okay to cry.
Mm-hmm.
It's okay to recognize the difference and to
Right.
acknowledge the difference.
Yeah. So you might be going through some of Kubler-Ross's depression.
Yeah.
and anxiety and anger, all the signs of this. And you're right, like, you know, it's not the same. Even if they're back at school, they're not necessarily doing after school programs they used to do, or, you know, the sports or the, you know, I was seeing a picture of a band this morning on the news is playing at nursing homes, and they have them like in an arc, and they're standing 6 feet apart. And then they even have like the instruments all have covering where the air gets blown out, have their own personal face masks, I guess, you know,
Oh.
like the saxophones and the tubas have a covering for them.
Mm-hmm.
And they're, you know, and they're playing, and because they're trying to find a way to, because in Florida, at least, all band competitions, so people, kids who's were in the band, that whole competition is now gone.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, and this may come at a different state of loss. This might be for your child who's going in to be a freshman, and they were really looking forward to it, or this may be the senior year for your child who was really looking forward to their senior year band competition, you know. And you know, and in every sport there's this condition going on, so there's losses in school reopening, because it's, although there's a part of it that's similar, there's a lot that's not.
Right. So, you know, that's another thing to kind of talk through when you're trying to cope with this is, you know, what are some new activities and participating in new activities, and also some of the old ones. This is where being creative can really help you feel better. When we're accessing the creative part of our brain, it's actually really good for us.
Yeah, and I love that what you said earlier about the both and, like, it can be both a loss and something different that's good for us, right? It can be both. Things can be both good and bad.
Right.
And when you get too angry or too aroused, it can be hard to see both and. You know. But yeah, quite kind of finding an awareness to what can fulfill you in this time, right? What can make you happy in this time, or what, you know, what's okay, you know, like resting a little bit more. I had kind of a burnout week last week. I did a couple of conferences. I saw a lot of clients. A lot happened in my personal life that I was taking care of with family members and friends. And I just, like, kind of Sunday, I just said, I'm not really sure I'm getting out of bed. I eventually did, but I just kind of, I just think I'll watch some, like, movies I've watched before in the past. I'm just going to kind of disappear, you know. If it's not too hot, I'll go lay in the hammock, you know, because Florida's really hot right now, but then we had a lot of storms, so I couldn't do that.
Yeah, it rained all day on Sunday. So
yeah,
I think one of the things that we did is we watched Marvel movies. It was our movie day, and it was wonderful.
Yeah. That's good.
Yeah.
And, you know, how do you build resiliency during this time for yourself? How do you restore? You may not be able to restore or become resilient to the same capacity you used to non-pandemic times. So I would call it like pandemic burnout resiliency. What is that? You know, how do you replenish your own bank account? How do you self-care?
Right.
And you may have had some self-care methods early in this pandemic that are just simply not working. So you might have to get creative to come up with different ones. You know, maybe exercise is still good for you, but not really giving you the payback that it did at the beginning. So these may be even, you know, kind of almost opposite. Like, I'm feeling like sometimes my clients who, like, well, I exercise, you know, all the time, and that usually makes me feel good, and it doesn't make me feel good anymore. And I'm like, well, maybe you should take a couple days off and not exercise. Maybe it's the opposite of what was building resiliency before.
Trying new things. Trying new things is a good thing. You know, I was listening to a podcast with Esther Perel a few days ago, and she says, our mental health is connected to our social connections.
Mm.
You know, and so one of the things that's, you know, why our mental health has been in such decline because of this pandemic and we're feeling burnt out is because our social connections we have not been able to do that as much or to the capacity. So I think, you know, as we're trying to rebuild our resiliency, it's how can we do that like how can we connect or maintain our relationships even in a safe way? Because that is important. That connection is important.
Yeah, I mean, we've been doing these Zoom podcasts for a while, and we hadn't seen each other in a long time. So you and I got together kind of for a socially distanced evening on Monday, and I think there's something very important just being in the presence of someone physically. It felt really good for us to do that. We liked enjoying recording the podcast together in the same room,
Yes.
but we've been trying to do them apart to be safe. And I have been able to get together with a couple of friends, even in this last very stressful week, and colleagues, you know, a good 6-8 feet apart, and talk and connect. And, you know, I would encourage you to possibly, even if you can, find people that you can get together in their physical presence. I think we're doing all these Zoom meetings or whatever online connections, and it's not. So if there's a neighbor that you could sit outside with, you know, through the picket fence, or get in someone's physical presence, be their body to your body to be with their body. We know that when people's bodies get together, there's a somatic kind of connection, and it helps relax us because we're pack animals, and we're in proximity of each other. It makes us feel like we have a pack. And for a lot of us, our pack has become really small at our homes, and we need a larger pack. You know, and this telehealth stuff is good, but there is an incomplete part of it. So having a pack of physical people around us can be important.
Right. Right.
So remember, this is pandemic.
Yes.
Pandemic burnout. This is pandemic stress. This is not normal. And it's okay to approach this a little bit alternatively than you have been. And if you've hit a wall in the last month, you are right on track with the rest of us. We are
Be kind.
Be
kind to yourself.
Yeah.
We're all in this. We're all experiencing the wall.
Yeah. Nobody isn't a beginner at this pandemic burnout. All of us don't know exactly our way through it. Even us experts here, you and I are working on it together too.
Yes.
And it's okay to slow down and not be the highest of achiever that you've always been.
Yes. And we're going to post the articles that we've been referencing on our Facebook page. Please check it out because they're great articles that have been really helpful. I think when Annette and I both read them, we were like, oh my gosh, we need to talk about this on our show. So be kind, slow down, cry if you need to.
Yeah. Watch comedians. Sometimes comedians are good. You know, watch an old movie that you've seen 100 times. Feel free to sit back with The Wizard of Oz or The Sound of Music again, and just, you know, be a child and tend to yourself. Have some chicken noodle soup and, you know, rest up and treat it like a sickness that it is. It's a lot. It is a lot of exhaustion for a body and a mind to be going through, and your whole system needs to relax. So the more you can give yourself permission to do that, the more you probably will recoup and be able to return to some of those early pandemic coping mechanisms. But this is going to be a roller coaster ride.
Yes.
So
All right,
thank
guys.
you so much for listening in.
Hang in there, and thank you again for listening, and have a great day.